African history, decentralized states in Africa and their organizations. Decentralized states in Africa and their organizations. Decentralized states are those states that did not have centralized leadership. Examples of these societies included the Aitso, Karamojong, Maasai, Kikuyu, Chaga, Yao in East Africa, the Igbo of Nigeria, the Tiv of Ghana. Power and authority were dispensed among many political players/citizens. Leadership was never hereditary, i.e., it was never handed over to the next generation by birthright. Those who exercised leadership did so on a part-time basis. Such responsibilities as leading others in war, guiding others in meetings and so on were part-time jobs. For example, among the Igbo of West Africa, the Kikuyu, the Aitso of East Africa, the same prevailed. Another characteristic of decentralized societies was the existence of advisory councils that carried out the day-to-day administration of the society. These councils included the village council/assembly that functioned as the legislature, i.e., law-making body/parliament. The village assembly comprised of every member of society. This is what made the decentralized societies most democratic, egalitarian. The village assembly worked in conjunction with the council of elders, which comprised of elderly men of wisdom, men who knew well the history of the society. This council operated as an arbiter rather than the government body. In matters pertaining to the judiciary, the village council as well as the council of elders worked together to design laws and implement them. There were no specialized courts of law, but village assemblies operated as highest court of appeal. In case of a conflict between members of a given society or between clans, the village assembly would sit and discuss openly the proceedings of the case and come up with an agreeable decision and solutions. This, however, sometimes had a disadvantage of mob justice. In the area of defense, the decentralized states did not have standing armies of professional soldiers, but this did not mean absence of security. In the absence of a standing army, the matters of security were a collective responsibility of every citizen. This therefore meant that, in times of war, in case of aggression, every able-bodied man would be called upon to equip himself and defend his motherland. It is this very attitude and patriotism that was exhibited later in the African resistances against the imposition of colonial rule. Decentralized societies resisted more than any other society, e.g., the Nandi, Tiv of Ghana. Acquisition of office in the decentralized societies was often based on merit and never birthright. This therefore promoted competition for all offices, and the resultant effect was the placement of the best in office. From a social point of view, there were significant features among the decentralized states, and most important of all was the clan system. This was the basic social-political unit. Every citizen belonged to a particular clan in which all members of the clan claimed common ancestry origin, and the various clans made up the society. All the societies then claimed a common origin. The clan was therefore a social-political unit that was bound together by belief of a common ancestor. The clan was an instrument of social cohesion. Religious belief bound the people together and cemented their relationships. People of a given society believed in common religion/similar religion, which was based on ancestral spirits and often had spirit mediums which mediated between the living and the dead, e.g., the Igbo had the Arachuku who connected the dead. These often played an important role in the maintenance of the law and order, as people were very keen never to annoy the spirits of the ancestors. Decentralized societies had unwritten laws and traditions that had to be followed strictly. These were regarded. African history, decentralized states in Africa and their organizations. Age set/age grades were a common feature among decentralized societies. Members of the same age bracket belonged to the same age grade and often tasked to perform specific duties. Like the youth were charged with activities such as cleaning the marketplace, pathways, water sources such as wells, or cleaning the compound of homesteads, while the elderly served on the council of elders. It is important to note that these age grades were also subdivided on parallel lines based on sex. This signified real organization and order. From the economic point of view, the decentralized states were equally organized. Economic activities were carried out depending on geographical factors. Some societies practiced pastoralism mostly in drier areas like Turkana, Maasai, Karamojong, Tiv, and Tuaregs, while others carried out cultivation of crops and hunting as a source of livelihood like the Igbo, yet others participated in mixed farming. Trade was also carried out, but in small doses as compared to centralized polities. Like among the Igbo, it's the Arachukas that involved themselves in trade, especially in the slave trade era, as they used it as a way of punishment. The natural resources of the society were owned communally, as any body was allowed to claim ownership individually over them. This communal ownership encouraged the citizens to protect resources. Such resources included land, pasture, and water resources. This lessened conflict over the resources, thus maintaining law and order. Summary of features of acephalous societies. Political. No centralized leadership. Leadership never hereditary/no. Inheritance. Existence of advisory councils, e.g., council of elders, village assembly. No standing army but circumstantial armies. Acquisition of office was based on merit. A clan was the basic political unit. Egalitarian society / everyone decision make social. Belief in religion. Norms and customs dos and don'ts. Intermarriages. Existence of age sets. Respect for elders. Initiation ceremonies / festivals. Sex education. Common language. Economic. Trade relations. Crop cultivation. Animal rearing. Communal resource ownership. Other activities as pottery, mining, raiding, fishing to some. Decentralized states in Africa and their organizations. The Ibezero Igbo. They were the Igbo-speaking people and lived in south of River Benue and east of River Niger in Nigeria. They occupied the forested zone of southern Nigeria. For several years, they lived peacefully and cooperatively. Their main occupation was farming, trading, fishing and hunting. The Igbo did not develop into a centralized society because there were no serious external attacks from neighboring societies that necessitated them to forge unity. African history. Decentralized states in Africa and their organizations. They were divided into 5 cultural groups, namely Western / Riverine people, the Northern Oka, the Ori, the Cross River and Ogoja people. Political organization. The Igbo society was organized under a segmentary system and there was nothing like a central government. They did not have a centralized system of government because of so many reasons, one of them being the one mentioned above. There was no noble or royal family in the society, but the entire society was organized under cultural groups. Each cultural group was divided into a number of clans. All the people within any clan were considered relatives. The head of the village was called Okpur, and he was usually the oldest man in the area and assisted by the elders and other notables in the village. At emergency, the leadership of the village would go to the strongest. A man called the medicine man. Although the headman was expected to govern democratically, he was always authoritarian because, as the eldest member of the village, his command could not be disobeyed without serious consequences. The Igbo society was made up of several patrilineal clans. Members of these clans settled in villages, and each village was divided into various sections known as wards. At each level of society organization, people were called for meetings to handle matters affecting them. These were held in marketplaces, ward squares or inside an elder's compound. At village level, the Council of Elders was known as Omala, and the Village Assembly of Citizens was the most important institutions in the political organization of Igbo society. Adult males were free to take part in Elders' Council meetings to influence the decisions of the assembly. The deliberations led by the Elders' Council were usually introduced to other members of the village at the General Assembly. During the assembly, members were given chance to air out their views and, if necessary, to reject unpopular decisions made by the Elders' Council. The Igbo administration of justice was also done democratically. Conflicts between individuals of different families were solved before the whole society, presided over by elders in a given village who did a commendable job. In case justice was not instituted properly, the affected group would act in a mob for their demands in the village. It gave no opportunity to the accused to defend himself amidst such an attack/war, hence making the whole system quite dangerous. There were age sets in Igbo land used to enforce the maintenance of law and order in most of the cultural groups of the Igbo. After a specific period, young people were initiated into an age set in which they remained till they passed to adulthood. Young age sets were responsibility for keeping the village tidy, older ones for cleaning the bush, farming and construction of new marketplaces. This system of age sets encouraged unity because the people they constituted were loyal to their leaders, leading to political stability in Igbo land. In some parts of Igbo land, age set leaders occupied equal position under Elders' Council along with the elders. This enabled the young men to channel their opinions through their leaders to the council. If the Omala made unpopular decisions and refused to call the assembly, the people had the right to force elders to call one. The village assembly was considered a man's birthright, a guarantee of his rights, his shield against oppression, and the means whereby the young and progressive members of the society impressed their views upon the elders and more conservative ones. The Omala could not push a decision against the will of the assembly. African history. Decentralized states in Africa and their organizations. The Igbo social behavior was at times conditioned by religion, as people feared to go against the interests of the Igbo gods. Crimes such as murder and adultery were regarded as serious offenses against the Igbo gods in the community. In case, the offender expected serious punishments by members of his community and above all by the gods. After being punished by the Igbo authorities, the offender was also required to appease the gods for purification and cleansing of the past crime. This was aimed at maintaining law and order. The Igbo had several gods and goddesses, like a goddess for earth, to which many farmers used to offer sacrifices so as to get rain and great harvests. Although the Igbo had many gods and goddesses, they believed in the existence of a supreme god oracle whom they referred to as Chuku by the Northern Igbo or Chinese by the Southern Igbo. Wealth and a good record of service could elevate one to a position of high society's esteem. Social stratification in Igbo society was limited. The Igbo have been referred to as an individualistic and egalitarian society. Everyone considered himself as good as everyone else, and this bred competition between individuals, families, clans, and other social groups. Economic organization. They cultivated a number of crops like yams, palm oil. Yams were the most important staple food for the Igbo people. They also kept some animals on a small scale, and these were important for provision of milk, beef, hides, and skins. The Igbo people also carried out internal trade. Different cultural groups specialized in different items of trade, like Aka and Ero people were dealt in exports and ironwork. They produced iron implements like hoes, spears, swords, and pangas. Internally also, the Igbo people had weekly market rotating in all villages of the Igbo society at different days in different regions. Barter trade was used in the exchange of goods in the Igbo society. They also carried out external trade. They mainly dealt in slave trade and palm oil, which Europeans needed most, especially after 1840s. The Igbo people also had industrial work dealing in weaving, ironwork, artcraft, and construction. These were locally carried out on small-scale basis. Because of the Aro traders, the Igbo society became a center for coastal traders from the Niger Delta states. Traders from Brass would come as far as Aro village in Igbo land. The Kikuyu. Linguistically, the Kikuyu belonged to the Bantu group of people whose history had been connected to the Katenga region of Congo. They presently occupy the Kenyan highlands in the Republic of Kenya. Political organization. They had no kings or hereditary officers. They had 9 clans corresponding to the 9 daughters of Kikuyu. The basic political unit was the Mbari, and each Mbari was headed by a council of elders Kaima. Because of its mountainous nature, each tribe formed almost a territory of a single Mbari. However, this did not signify a division of different Mbaris living in the neighborhood. The Kikuyu clans were subdivided into age groups known as Reka. The Reka was in turn subdivided into age regiments. They were important in maintaining law and order. They had no standing army but had a substantial army. Soldiers were organized under a leader who was usually African history, decentralized states in Africa and their organizations. A clan was the basic unit of administration. They had 9 clans corresponding to 9 daughters of Kikuyu, a legendary founder. The clan leader was Muromati. Social organization. Among the Kikuyu, land was of great social significance. Just as a man, he did not marry out of the land, and it was urged that a wife would not feed a family without cultivation of her husband's land. This looked understandable, bearing in mind the conditions of the day where a sole source of survival was the soil. Initiation among the Kikuyu was through circumcision, and it was for both girls and boys at the age of 18. It was done every year for girls. They had age groups. Boys and girls formed junior and senior warriors. They respected age, i.e., the elders enjoyed prestige. They were referred to as the wise and were treasured so much that even no one could accept to make a payment to join the rank of the elders in society. This could, however, be only done when the firstborn of the aspirant had undergone circumcision. Religion was an important aspect in the social organization of the Kikuyu. It was imperative for unity across Mbaris or joint families. The Kikuyu are said to have believed in a supreme god called Ngai. It is interesting to note that this god was approached through elders. The Kikuyu god was always believed to be available at birth, initiation, marriage, death, sickness. A clan was a basic social organ. They had 9 clans. The clans brought about unity. There was division of labor. Economic organization. The Kikuyu were seasonal agriculturalists. They grew and cultivated cereals as well as vegetables. Crops included sorghum, maize, bananas, peas, yams, sugarcane, and pumpkins. They were predominantly agriculturalists. There was division of work as man cleared land, cultivated, planted trees, while women also joined cultivation, then did sowing and most harvesting. They had communal work where they called on neighbors for large-scale duties like weeding and harvesting. Due to the geographical setup of the area, they carried out some little pastoralism. They kept some cattle, goats, sheep, alongside was keeping of bees for honey. No fishing or poultry keeping. They were chief participants in the 19th century long-distance trade. Both internal and external trade existed. They also carried out trade with their neighbors like the Akamba because the long-distance trade route passed on the kings of Kikuyu land. It is possible that the Kikuyu must have got involved in this kind of trade. Specialization among the Kikuyu was limited, but some elements of it did exist. Like in agriculture, men did the land clearing, planting of trees, while women contributed little in the area. Nevertheless, most of their activities included pottery, ironworking. They carried out hunting and gathering. The Aitso-Aitsots of Uganda. They were part of the Plain Nilotes, settled in northeastern Uganda Karamajong-Aitso region. They, however, separated from the Karamajong main group by its Karamajong subgroup due to overpopulation, their lifestyle being migrants and because of spirit of adventure. They, however, moved southwards. They currently occupy the area between MT, Napak and El Bisna, as well as northern slopes of MT, Elgon. This society was formed as a result of migration of people from northeastern direction into the present day. African history, decentralized states in Africa and their organizations. Cabo Verdejo, Angola, Guinea, Bikedi, etc. Their institutions were all less the same like those of pre-colonial Nom. Centralized states in northern Uganda like the Langi, Acholi, Alere, etc. Political organization. They were a decentralized society with no central authority. The clan units were the basic forms of social, political, and social organization in Tiso. The clan was made up of several extended families. The biggest family was known as Itela and the smallest was Aker. There were clan heads responsible for day-to-day affairs of clan members. These would be assisted by elders whenever they required. Use of elders was quite useful in solving society problems. The clan heads used to convene meetings at regular intervals in case of disputes between members of two or more clans. They convened to settle them. Leaders of clans were involved in their disputes when called upon to mediate settled down upon them. Since there was no central control as that which appeared in Buganda, the Aitso and their serious clans had a common identity to be defended. In case of an invasion, a military leader was expected to lead the army to join other village warriors in defense of the whole society. The various village military leaders would come together and elect a supreme Arowin to lead them through the war. The Arowins would at times train their men purposely to raid neighboring societies. Military action was always guided by fratellos. These would stop war preparations in case they foresaw or anticipated failure in the battlefield. Another influential chief, Ekobam, village ambassador, settled internal disputes in villages. Like other non-centralized societies, i.e. the Kikuyu, Bajisu, and the Igbo, the Aitso had no standing army, but later on military alliances and confederacies emerged. The Aitso circumcised army settled internal disputes and served defense purposes against Karamajan invasions. It also raided neighboring societies for cattle and the Bajisu for bananas. Disputes and differences existed, but when they occurred between clan members, such disputes were considered internal and settled within the clan. Inter-clan quarrels and differences, however, were settled with the help of a third party. There could be a third clan invited to help in settling the differences. They also had an age-set system known as Atchery. Social organization. Socially, the Aitso society greatly associated itself in terms of clan units. The elders were important as guides in social matters. They were to conduct initiation and marriage ceremonies. They taught the young generation on social and political history of Aitso. They also contributed much in educating the young ones on expected lines of conduct in Aitso society. And Namuran was another important figure in the social organization of the Aitso, and the rise of one in any clan was believed to be a gift from God. They carried out rituals and prescriptions to help barren women conceive, foretold the fortunes of a hunt/war. Gifts were usually given to Amurans in appreciation of their services to the community. There was respect or observance of social discipline. In Aitso's families, no child was allowed to eat before the elders began, for this was a sign of greed. There was respect for age. Elders were accorded respect due to their priestly functions. They settled disputes, suppressed the army, were opinion leaders as well as key decision-makers. Though the elders were dominant, some influential and hard-working youths commanded social prestige and respect. African history, decentralized states in Africa and their organizations. Marriage was important. Intermarriages were recommended that strengthened ties between members of different clans. Economic organization. Pastoralism was the major economic activity. They kept animals like cattle, goats, and sheep. Cattle were a symbol of status, prestige. It was also to provide meat and blood. Internally, people exchanged a variety of items, especially between cattle keepers or cultivators. They were cultivators. The Aitso mainly gave out cattle products in exchange of items like salt and iron implements from Bunyoro. The Baganda supplied back cloth and bananas with Aitso in exchange for cattle products such as milk, hides, meat, and skins. Aitso also survived through taxation and raising of revenues or tributes from the neighboring controlled societies. These were very important in building the economy of Aitso clan units. Hunting was also important among the Aitso. It acted as an adventure as well as a source of food. This saved the Aitso cattle from slaughter. Products of hunting served as clothing and bedding. It was popular but also part-time, and because of the dangers involved in it, it was done in groups. Amurans were consulted and later rewarded with the products of hunting. It was a source of medicine and a dry season occupation. The crafts industry also existed among the Aitso, and pottery, wooden products were made. Apart from serving domestic purposes, i.e. products of industry, crafts were also traded. They raided their neighbors like Karamajan and Bajisu for cattle and other items. They were cultivators. They grew crops like millet, sorghum, groundnuts, cassava, and potatoes. Other economic activities included fishing done on lakes and rivers using simple methods of fishing prior